Welcome everyone to the Philadelphia Committee on City Policy, our monthly chat, get together. We've got a huge number of past meetings that shed a lot of light on great things that are happening around the city, issues and concerns. This is being recorded, so everybody knows that this is a recording. You should all be on mute right now, so that we don't have a lot of background noise. The other thing I will let folks know, there are a couple of people that have signed up that are with the media. If you are with the media, anything that is said here is just for information purposes only. If you want to quote John or any of us here, you need to ask for permission to do that. But this is really a background for people to understand whatever issues we're talking about. Other thing about the Philadelphia Committee on City Policy is we have monthly meetings practically every month. And I'm not sure which is when the next meeting is. Can somebody help me with that? Do we have it set yet, a date, Nancy, or no? Okay. But keep an eye out for future meetings. Our goal is to inform people and to really provide support for great things happening in our city. So let's get started. Today we have John Chin from Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation. Many of you know John. I'll just say I certainly know John. I served on the board. I was actually the board chair of PCDC for a number of years with John, in partnership with John. And we got some real stuff done. A lot of affordable housing, a lot of housing that PCDC does. And it is, and John will explain, it is the planning organization and the RCO for Chinatown. Right now we have about 31 participants here. I expect another 10, maybe about 50 people signed up. Eventually we will go back to in-person, not yet. PCCP used to do these as luncheon meetings, and we would meet over lunch and have a speaker. But we've been holding off for a while because of the pandemic. But probably this year at some point we will go back to in-person. And everybody, please mute your microphone so I don't have to do it. Thank you. And if you have a question, please raise your hand or put it in the chat, and that will be helpful for us as John goes on. So without further ado, I want to introduce John Chin. John has been the director of Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation for quite a few years now. John was like 15 when he started, so he's, a little older now. And John will tell you what the purpose of PCDC is and how it got started, and more so, I think, importantly, the context of Chinatown, of Philadelphia Chinatown, and context of Chinatowns in general, and why the latest issue being the arena is just one in a series of things that have been ongoing for years. It's not something, it's not an anomaly, but it's also different from other situations. And PCDC is looking at it along with a lot of other folks in Chinatown, a lot of other leadership to figure out what's the best for the community. Things that you might be reading in the paper, you might hear certain things, but at the ground level, really, John is there, and he'll give some perspective on that. But it's a broader perspective, as I said. And one other thing I'll mention about John is that he's been leading a lot of the efforts around anti-Asian hate in Philadelphia, in particular supporting the victims and pushing the city and others to make sure that we don't brush it under the table. As part of that effort, in a really proactive way, supporting what's called Black and Gold, basically Asian and African American, Black working together to find commonality and to fight hate. And John is working on, I understand it, a youth version of that, which is kind of cool. So without further ado, I'll let John take it from here. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and please mute your microphones so that we can hear John clearly. Thank you.
Andy, thanks very much for the introduction. Quite frankly, you probably could have done the presentation.
Oh, by the way, John, do you see what's in my background? Real quick.
Yeah, I see Chen Lin. I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah. This was at El Sabor Catracho on 7th Street in South Philly, and he had done the trash cans. We found this great artist through PCDC partly, and he's done a lot of good stuff in South Philly as well. And his latest big creation is your at the Crane, right?
That's right.
The huge mural.
Chen Lin is one of a member of a group of artists that painted the new Crane mural on our Crane building in Chinatown. That's the high-rise tower that Andy Toy was critically involved in getting financed and developed. And we have a wonderful community center now that's active 7 days a week, providing the services that we originally intended, recreation, cultural, health, and social services. So we're very, very proud of the Crane building, and as well as the mural that's on it now. And, you know, Chen Lin, who's an artist, teaches at PAFA, is really a distinguished artist. He and his fellow artists that painted the mural. We have a lot of talent in Chinatown, and that's part of the attraction and the preciousness of Chinatown. So with that, I will share my screen and see if I can do this properly. And go into it's a quick presentation, and let's see. Can you see the screen now?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, again, thanks very much for having me. I'll talk a little bit about the history of Chinatown. And I think most of you know this, and for those who do not, there'll be some interesting information about Chinatown. I think the most famous tourist attraction of Chinatown is really this Friendship Gate, which was developed in 1983. It was a gift from our sister city, Tianjin, China. And it's the first authentic gate built by artisans who came from China to erect this wonderful landmark. Chinatown boundaries of our planning RCOs, 8th Street to 13th Street, east-west, and Filbert Street going up to Spring Garden Street. So we've done a lot of work and partnerships and collaborations. I see Patrick Starr, who's on this Zoom call as well. He's focused and done a lot of really great work along the Spring Garden Greenway project. And, you know, we were a partner, a collaborator in providing input and engagement along the planning exercises that Patrick carried out on Spring Garden. But our Chinatown was founded in 1870. The first business was established at 911 Race Street. There's a historic marker there. But Chinatown here in Philadelphia or New York, Boston, San Francisco, these were enclaves that Chinese found to establish a place where they could call home. Unfortunately, even today, there's quite a bit of racism that Chinese and Asian Americans have been experiencing. The spike occurred with the beginning of the pandemic when our leader of this country made it okay for people to act out on their biases and be openly racist. But that's how we're founded. You know, Philadelphia's Chinatown was known as Skid Row. New York's was the Bowery. Boston's Chinatown was in the red light district. So these were neighborhoods that were not desirable for any family that wanted a neighborhood to move into. Growing up as a kid in Chinatown, we had the Trocadero, which used to be an opera house, but when I grew up, it was burlesque theater. and we had bars on every corner. But what Chinatown provided for Chinese Americans when they were founded, and even today for broader Asian Americans, is a place of sanctuary where people looked the same as you, spoke the same language, but more importantly, it was a sanctuary away from the racism that many experience. One of our founders of PCDC, George Moy, would say that Chinatown for him was a getaway from the racism that he experienced as a student at school. And that's why once Holy Redeemer opened up in 1945, his family sent him and his siblings to attend Holy Redeemer Chinese Catholic Church and school. So these are the stories you will hear consistently about why Chinatown is an important hub for many Asian Americans. And these are just some old photos that you can find on the Philadelphia Historic websites. For those who are older, the one on the right, I think that's the old China Castle restaurant, one of the more popular restaurants in Chinatown many decades ago. And then on the left is 9th Street. I think it's between Race and Spring. South China Restaurant was a really, really popular destination. One of the more famous dishes was the, filleted fish lo mein. And you can hear some of the waiters the older people who used to wait at South China talk about the restaurant. And, there's the Trocadero Burlesque Theater when I was a kid. We have the Chinese Cultural Center, which was a really important landmark and provided these extravagant Chinese New Year dinners in the 1970s and 80s. T.T. Chang was the man behind this, and he actually brought in chefs from China to produce these banquets. And then as we go into the 1960s, 1966 was the first time that this community needed to organize against the Vine Street Expressway to save the Holy Redeemer Church and School, which you see the top left-hand corner. It's the photo of the front of the church. The highway proposal would have taken the front half of the church. But I think people were smart enough to know is that if you take the front half, the church and school will probably pretty much die after that. And over the years, you see various projects and protests, but we also see, as Andy Toy talked about, PCDC developing and contributing to the betterment of Chinatown. On the left, you see a photo of Cecilia Moy, yet one of the founders and of PCDC. And one of the persons who really galvanized the elders in Chinatown in 1966, leading into 1970s, and the next generation to become activists to save and to preserve Chinatown. Here, I think we're at the Gimsan Plaza development at the corner of 9th and Race Streets under construction. And I mentioned George Moy, that's him on the right-hand side. And these are just some samples of developments that we've built over the years and samples of some of the challenges that have come upon Chinatown, the baseball stadium 22 years ago. And this aura of activism has really carried on through the generations, as you have seen in the news recently in reaction to the 76ers arena. It's not always about protests or urban development. We have social programs helping people apply for benefits, youth programs, and fun. We provide fun cultural programming for this community. The one on the right is a recent photo of the Stop Hate campaign. I think about 15 months ago, there were 4 Central High School students, all Asian, who were assaulted on the Broad Street subway line. And today's Chinatown, we have a picture of the crane, the tower, and the community center. Bottom right, we went into a partnership with Project Home. We built 94 units of affordable rental housing. Half of the housing is for formerly homeless. and the other half is for immigrants, mostly low-income immigrants. Very successful partnership, and it's a model to develop diverse communities within one single apartment building. Top left, we pay tribute to the 125th anniversary mural that tells the story of our Chinatown and our struggles. And on the right, a project that we're working on right now, we submitted a $2 million grant application in partnership with OTIS, the Office of Transportation Infrastructure Systems, and PennDOT. Apply for a $2 million grant to do some planning around a proposed capping of sections of the Vine Street Expressway. Paul Levy's Center City Group capped parts of the western section around Logan Square and the Free Library. We're working on the eastern end, and hopefully this connects in the future. So that's a very quick introduction into PCDC, who we are and why we exist. While we are a community development corporation focused on neighborhood planning and urban planning, we do a lot of work around social issues and social services. So thanks.
Great. That's a very quick overview. And there's so much other work that PCDC has done over the years that John didn't even mention. But in my opinion, affordable housing and housing in general is really key to the success of a neighborhood. And certainly PCDC has that as the highest priority, or one of the highest priorities. We have a lot of time for questions or thoughts. And I know some of you have been watching what's been going on lately, and beyond, actually. Certainly, like Paul Levy has been involved and worked with Chinatown for many years. So anybody have some thoughts or questions, feel free to raise your hand, probably is the easiest way, or put it in the chat. Well, I'll start it then. Hey, John, so what is your feeling? What is the current situation as everybody reads in the papers that many in Chinatown are against the arena, as we were against the baseball stadium, many people. And Patrick Starr is actually asking that question. So what's the current situation as you see it?
Sure. Thanks for that question. The 76ers arena, we have put together a steering committee of which represents a diverse representation of Chinatown. While PCDC is a planning agency, this particular arena proposal has serious impacts, large impacts, not just upon Chinatown, but Market Street and the other neighbors adjoining it. And because it has such a large impact, we wanted to make sure that we not only heard the voices of our diverse community, but had some expertise and some consultation about how to engage these different groups in Chinatown and how to elicit their feelings and thoughts about it. So PCDC went about to form the steering committee. It's made up of some key stakeholders and institutions in Chinatown. We have PCDC, we have church members, church institutions. We also have the Chinese Benevolent Association, which is an umbrella organization here in Philadelphia, but that's a national network of CBAs, Chinese Benevolent Associations, across the country, sort of have been the leading voice and representatives of smaller organizations in Chinatown whose native language is Chinese. And then we also incorporated the Philadelphia Chinese Combined Organizations United, which is a more modern version of the traditional umbrella organization. And then we added residents and we added some business owners. because we thought this would give us a much more diverse voice to help us process through how we engage our own community to solicit a response to the arena, but also to engage with the 76ers. So that's where we're right now. We planned 3 meetings in January. The business meeting took place 10 days ago. We had our residents meeting last night, and very, very successful. I think the 76ers have pretty heard loud and clear through a number of different protests and demonstrations that people care very, very much about this Chinatown. It has special meaning for many individuals and groups, and all these relationships that people have with Chinatown are very different. Residents live here, workers work here, small businesses make a living here, and property owners have a financial interest. But there's people who don't live here also have a connection to Chinatown because it gives them this sanctuary, like I talked about, from racism, or this is a social gathering place for them, or they come to church here or go to Buddhist temple here. So, and as far as our engagement and conversation with the 76ers, quite frankly, beyond what they presented to the city of Philadelphia in the summer, there's no new updates about how the planning and evolution of their work has progressed. I think from our point of view, the one of the biggest challenge is parking and traffic, and we're still waiting for this.
Yeah, and I'm sure you could continue to elaborate on some of this, but it's good that you guys have had a number of meetings, and it sounds like it'll continue.
By the way, Andy.
Yeah.
So I know the media has reported, and the media is wrong, that this committee that PCDC has created, it's an independent committee by the community for the community. It's not a 76ers committee. So I think that's one point I want to make sure that's clear. And there was, I think it's been out there that 76ers have a plan to contribute and support this community with funding dollars. So as of today, we're talking right now, there hasn't been one penny that the community has gotten from the 76ers. I think, who doesn't want funding? But the funding has to serve a purpose to preserve and protect our community. And that part of it hasn't even been figured out yet.
Right. Yeah, and people point to other Chinatowns. I think every Chinatown's different. We've seen some go out of existence. We've seen some struggle. There are definitely issues out there beyond an arena or stadium, actually. Let me just go through a few of these other questions. Could you elaborate on the grant situation with PennDOT and Otis? And I think that also relates to Maurice's question about the capping of Vine Street and the parking lot on the northwest corner of 8th and Race. And
Okay.
what is the state of play for that? Yeah.
Sure. Vine Street capping. Otis did a fantastic job of helping to put a majority of the proposal together because they are the transportation experts. And that was submitted last fall. I think, fingers crossed, our expectation was that US DOT would be responding to the application for the Reconnecting Communities grants in late January. So we're almost here, and we're hoping to get some news of that soon. But I mentioned Center City District's work in Paul Levy. I want to acknowledge Paul Levy. He's been spending a lot of time with the engineers that are very familiar with the Vine Street Expressway structure, and he shared some of that data with us, and that was really helpful for us in terms of assessing this vision for capping, as well as helping us articulate the argument for the potential for various options for the expressway, and also articulating what is feasible and what may not be feasible. So a lot of work has been put into it. but a lot more work needs to be done. And right now we're going through a 15-month engagement process with folks about the vision for the capping for the expressway. And that's being run out of the OTA shop with their consultant, McCormick Taylor.
So in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge facing Chinatown today?
Chinatown has several challenges. Chinatowns across the country and in Philadelphia, we're always facing the potential for displacement. And there's several factors that contribute to this. The changing of immigration patterns. Immigrants who arrive here in Philadelphia can choose immediately to land in other neighborhoods. They don't have to land in Chinatown first, although that still happens. There's other satellite neighborhoods that have competitive offerings that Chinatown offers. Asian supermarkets, restaurants, this phenomenon with bubble tea shops are found everywhere. So there's a challenge that Chinatown is no longer the only unique destination if you want authentic food and services, right? So that's a second challenge. The third challenge is because we're adjacent to Center City, rising real estate prices have always been a challenge, and they continue to be. So even though Chinatown's a mixed income neighborhood with market rate housing and low income housing, there's a tremendous pressure from real estate values going up that makes it less affordable for families and people to live in Chinatown. And that can have an impact on Chinatown's authenticity and who it wants to serve. So for instance, 7,000 people live in Chinatown's census tracts right now. Of that 7,000, 3,600 are Asian. So 10 years ago, that percentage of Asian was much greater. The density was much greater, but also the population was much less. So those are contributing to the disappearing Chinatowns. And lastly, I'll say the pandemic has created this economic hardship. With the pandemic comes changes in consumer behavior. The pandemic and the anti-Asian hate has caused a reduction of visitors and pedestrians who are specifically Asian. That's been a huge drop-off. In the evenings, once it gets dark, you don't see that same Asian American traffic. And Chinatown needs to figure out how to make up that pedestrian traffic that used to come from morning to past midnight.
Right. Rob and Maurice also asked the question of the block between 8th and 9th. I guess between Race and Vine. What are the plans for that? That's a big block, and I know there's some things in the works right now.
Yeah, the right now Penrose is building a 51 units low-income housing tax credit project for senior citizens on the west side of the property. PCDC is interested in developing some density there of housing, commercial space for small business owners, housing which would be mixed income, and trying to commit some investment of open space because Chinatown lacks a lot of open space there. That parcel is owned by the City Land Bank, and they said once they finish and convey the property to Penrose, which will begin the senior housing, then they can focus on the remainder of the two parcels that are divided by the Ridge Avenue subway spur and the commuter rail tunnel that runs north and south. So even though that's a big parcel, because of the subways underneath, it's what we can build in there is very limited.
Yeah, we've been talking about that for years. It's very complex. Jessica asked, what's the age range of the people on the steering committee? Are new generations included?
So Yeah, there's different generations included.
And
I
we're talking
think,
about the steering committee for the arena work
yeah,
for the Sixers. Yeah.
the arena. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's different generations. There's native Chinese native speakers who are first generation immigrants. They're the older generation. We have middle-aged business owners, and then we have some younger folks. Maybe the youngest person might be in their mid-30s. Yeah, that sort of triggers my question. Do we need some even younger folks? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Another question on the arena about other impacts beyond the transportation and planning regarding maybe cultural or historic issues that might be impacted.
Yeah, like I said, Chinatown really is a hub. It has this strong cultural identity as being an Asian American hub, to celebrate the culture, to experience the culture, and just everyday work live neighborhood. And I think it's really important to preserve this unique neighborhood that we have here. It's no different from wanting to preserve the Italian market. That's seen some evolution, right, of immigrants coming through the Italian market. And one thing that we've been looking at, well, two things. We've been trying to wrap our arms around this idea that can Chinatown be part of a historic cultural district that includes Ben Franklin Square to our east. And at one point, we're thinking the African American Museum as well, right? And how would Reading Terminal fit into this? But we know that the African American Museum now has sites moving west to the former courthouse at 18th and Vine Streets. But can we still move forward this cultural district identity? And that helps to strengthen a larger section of the neighborhood that's multi-diverse. And the second thing that I've been participating in, as invited by Bill Marazzo, which is he's created this committee to look at how neighborhoods in and around Independence Mall interact with it. And this work is sort of critical important because in 2026, we're celebrating a big celebration for this country's birthday, as well as the World Cup soccer. So there's some critical outcomes that we want to achieve. And we want Chinatown to have its unique identity, but also be part of a larger network that connects us to other parts of city history and city neighborhoods.
Yeah, just two comments. One is that Vine Street capping would really help to connect it to the west side. And in fact, maybe connect it to the new African American Museum. The question was, what's going to happen to the old African American Museum? That's one of the questions. Do we know?
I don't know yet. Yeah, I haven't heard.
Mm-hmm. Another question is asking, Patrick's asking, what is the, seems like things are going upward in and around Chinatown development, that is, which is more dense. Who is the new market? Who is the market for these new housing units? And why not go further outward? And I'll just mention, you might want to mention how we have the overlay in Chinatown as well, which protects some of the lower density properties.
Yeah, Andy's referring to a city planning commission overlay, which limits the height of buildings in a certain section of Chinatown, like the core, to 65 feet. This was implemented in, I think, the mid-1980s. And it was implemented because it was a tool to help preserve Chinatown from larger urban developments, right? At that time, there were discussions about the convention center coming to the area. And what the Chinatown leadership at the time thought was, with the convention center will come the hotels and the parking garages. We don't want those types of uses to overrun Chinatown and basically destroy Chinatown. So I think the overlay served its our purpose really, really well in protecting Chinatown. But you know, with today's growing city population and the density and the growing population in Chinatown, we have been having many discussions about revisiting that height limitation in Chinatown, and how do we create density for people who want to live here because they enjoy the experience of what Chinatown has to offer, rather than live here because it's a convenient and nice neighborhood, and that's it, right? So yeah, so when it comes to urban planning, that is a challenge. One thing that we're seeing is that, which I don't like, is that some of the newer development that has happened is for transient residents, like Airbnbs and things like that. And I don't know that contributes to the identity of Chinatown that we want, but it's more like a hospitality way station for people coming in and out of the city.
I think Patrick has a follow-up question. You can ask that if you'd like.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, John, what I was actually, that was very helpful what you just described, because I wouldn't have known about the height limitation, because what I've been noticing is some of the older buildings along Race Street and Arch Street being built on top of. It seems like there's a lot of that going on, and I was very curious, who's the market for that? I can't imagine that's not expensive to do, and it seems like on some level it might be a good densification, but then it gets at what you just were saying, like who are those units actually going to be occupied by?
Yeah. Okay. So those units are targeting anyone who likes the convenience of living here on Arch Street or Race Street in Chinatown. And then, like I said, some of those are Airbnbs. So those don't contribute. They don't contribute to this organic growth of Chinatown. What we're lacking, the type of housing that we're lacking, is family-size homes. We need a lot more 3 bedrooms. I think families want to live in Chinatown, but the products that are being built are not suitable for them. They're mostly studios, 1 bedrooms, and sometimes 2 bedrooms. But if we can develop more family housing, and that's why that section that I talked about earlier, 8th and 9th Race Divine Street, is perfect for family housing and provide open space and parks there. The families will come. We have 3 great schools here in Chinatown: the Holy Redeemer, K through 8. We have Fax Charter School, K through 8. And then remember, McCall Elementary School is a magnet elementary school. McCall and I think Albert Greenfield are 2 of the top elementary schools in the city of Philadelphia. So families value the education that Chinatown has to offer, and they really want to move in here. We just don't have the housing product, and we're challenged with space too. So it's a challenge that we're working on, we're looking at, and hopefully if we can get the rights to build at 8th to 9th, we're going to do a lot more family housing.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think McCall is like 60% Asian right now. So it really is the local public school. It is the local public school. There is no other local public school. Fax is a charter school. And takes from all over the city. Why do the 6? So I know you can't read their minds necessarily, but this question is, there's a couple questions about why the Sixers believe that this is the right location. Their demography is suburban, maybe. And why don't they move to the former Gimbel site, which I don't have the answer to that either, but maybe you have talked to them about that.
I'm sure there's a few people in this group that might have better answers than me. We have talked about that with the 76ers, David Edelman. So their demographics say that quite a large portion of their attendees come from Center City. So that's why they believe the downtown arena will be in demand, and it'll be great for those who already live in Center City that go to Sixers games. That's what they've told us. And they, their feeling is that 10 years out, the way people transport themselves to places like an arena will be different from what it is today. I don't know what that looks like, but that's why they've confidently talked about how parking and traffic is not going to be a problem. But looking at it today, we see that as a huge problem. Our streets, we're an older city, and our streets in the area are very narrow compared to other cities. And even on a regular day, Chinatown is hard to get through the streets, 10th Street of Chinatown already. Was it 7 years ago, Otis had proposed a dedicated bike lane through 10th Street, Chinatown. And we were really adamant. PCDC said it's not going to work. It's going to create gridlock. And to their credit, they did a pilot just to test it, and it really didn't work. I mean, it backed up traffic on Race Street all the way back up to past Callowhill Street, because we have 300 businesses in Chinatown that need some kind of delivery. We have over 120 businesses just on the ground floor, and there's a quarter of delivery services that comes into Chinatown.
So after after the pandemic, what is the commercial vacancy rate? Are there any plans to try to attract more new businesses to Chinatown at this point?
There is vacancy. You do see vacant storefronts. You do what Chinatown needs is, yes, we need new businesses to come and fill the vacant storefronts. Off the top of my head, I don't know. I'd say maybe 10% vacancy. We also need this reinvestment of some of our existing businesses. I mean, the pandemic, three years of the pandemic, small business owners are financially struggling. They just don't have the capital funds to reinvest and upgrade their businesses. So there's a double whammy there. And so some work needs to be done. The good news is a brand new store just opened up on the 1000 block of Arch Street. I think it's a Japanese knick-knack store that just opened up. So while new things are coming in, but I think Chinatown needs some help when it comes to commercial investment.
I may have missed a couple along the way. Feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat. I do have a question. You and I haven't really talked much about this, or we talked a little bit about it. The Roundhouse is an opportunity for something. The building itself, whether we keep it or demolish it, and then behind it, there's a pretty large parking lot where the entrance used to be used for the police. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about that and how we can make sure that might be integrated into Chinatown, because it is the connecting site in some ways between there and Franklin Square. It's on the way to Franklin Square. If people know, it's between 7th and 8th, I guess, on Race Street.
Maybe this is a good conversation piece for everybody to chime in on. 9th Street is sort of the eastern end of the businesses of Chinatown. From 9th Street to Franklin Square, there's no positive pedestrian experience, right? So I think whatever goes there, they need to have a lot of buildings there that are front facing to the streets. Okay, I mean the police administration building is inward facing, even though they had the front entrance. It was, as far as I can remember, it was never opened. So we need front facing activity along Race Street, along 8th Street, 7th Street, all around that block. We need a high density of residents. we would love to incorporate and figure out how to extend the Chinatown commercial corridor, because I think if we build it, they will come, the business people come, because in the last 10 years, we've seen a migration of Chinese immigrants from Flushing, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Chinatowns coming to Philadelphia because of its affordability. I mean, our affordability is a fraction of their housing costs. And I think the folks that are living here now, they're looking for entrepreneurship opportunities. And, that's such an important place. And the city's carrying out many conversations about it. What that building symbolizes, what it can be, what it should be. Should it speak to the history of that place? So we've been engaged in that, and we just think from a planning perspective, there's a lot of opportunity to build that up that would support the neighbors and create this extension to Old City or the historic district.
Right. Oh, well, actually the next question is about the vision to connect Chinatown with the historic district. How will that impact business? And I'm guessing you're talking about Old City here. I'm not really clear which historic district would be connecting.
Yeah, I mean, this cultural district that I'm talking about could be anywhere east of the convention center district.
Mm-hmm.
And going further east to incorporate Franklin Square. I think if we can create a positive pedestrian experience for people, I think it will draw businesses. It will make it walkable. And but that section, if you're a tourist or even a resident of Philadelphia, you may not want to walk from Independence Mall to Chinatown and vice versa. We need to make significant improvements, whether it's lighting, sidewalks, landscaping, planters, maybe all of the above.
Did you find that the Lantern Festival or what was it called? The thing at Franklin Square.
It's Chinese Lantern Festival.
Yeah, did that open up opportunities for people? Did people feel like that was a good thing?
Yeah,
for the businesses.
Last year was a great thing for the businesses. It requires marketing and promotion, and we surveyed the businesses, and they saw foot traffic, and vice versa. It was a cross promotion, and people coming to Chinatown went to the Chinese Lantern Festival. So it's been a really good, positive draw for economic spending for Chinatown.
So we have about 8 minutes left. Any other comments or questions for John?
While we wait for questions, I just want to go back to the 76ers thing for a second. PCDC's been here for 56 years, and I was born and raised in Chinatown. So I have this bias in this community because I've seen it over and over again. If you don't speak English as a first language, your barriers to accessing anything, services, are really great. For instance, if you're trying to access a mortgage for a house, I've seen people, because they don't speak the language, they paid more for that mortgage. Same thing for business owners accessing loans. Unless you have the command of the English language, it's more challenging for you to access the same services or product at the same price. Because I grew up with this, I have a bias to ensure that people who don't speak English as a first language have as much opportunity or same opportunity to participate in the 76ers arena conversation. Excuse me. So PCDC has been adamant that we want to create this platform for people who live, work in Chinatown, or own property, or do business in Chinatown, because these are the voices that probably rise up above all the other voices. Now, that's not to say that I don't appreciate this Asian American swell of support that has arisen to saying that this is our Chinatown too. And shame on the 76ers for bringing an arena that can destroy our Chinatown. I think there's a great appreciation for that sentiment. But at the same time, those people who have to really make the decision are the ones that are financially impacted by living or working in Chinatown.
Mm-hmm. And what is the relationship in terms of any collaboration from city council in the process right now?
Our city councilman is Mark Squilla. And his approach has always been to let the facts come out and let things play out. And once we have all the information, then people can decide. Once the people decide, then that's what he'll go with, So that he's communicated that role to people many, many times. We've met with the City Planning Commissioner, Eleanor Sharp, and Deputy Mayor Ann Fedulin. Their message to us is that they care what happens to Chinatown, and they feel it's very, very important to figure out how to preserve Chinatown if the arena is coming. But they've told us they've had bi-weekly meetings with the 76ers, and we met with them, I think, in late November, and the city at that time was still waiting for parking and traffic studies.
Right, which is really, really, really important. Maurice is asking about the potential of, I think the reopening of the Patco station in Franklin Square. Is that moving forward, or is that happened? It's not there yet, right?
It's still under construction. I can't remember what the opening timeline is.
And that will connect pretty well with the Roundhouse, is what he's saying too. Of course, that's right there.
I think Patco's push for this was that it creates another transportation node that can bring pedestrians into this neighborhood. In fact, the Patco line goes all the way out to 16th and Lucas?
Right.
So, they believe that it'll bring people from that area to this area as well.
Yeah, I think the missing, I'll just make my commentary. We talk about SEPTA a lot, my friends and I, about how it can be better. It's definitely there's a lot of challenges right now, especially on the Market Street L. But Chinatown is like in a really great location for SEPTA. If we can, and the arena is too, if they figure out a way to use it. And that's always been a question. Some people take the Philadelphia approach. The way it is today is the way it's always going to be. But I'm hopeful that we can find ways to improve the system and actually get us all to use it more.
Speaking of SEPTA, Andy, one thing we really haven't had the resources to pay attention to is the Broad Street, Ridge Avenue spur.
Mm-hmm.
The station's right there at 8th and Ray Streets. That station needs a lot of help. It looks like, I don't know who's all those cars are parked on there. Maybe they're SEPTA employees or workers, but they're all over the pedestrian apron. But our plans to develop 8th and 9th incorporated a refurbishing of that station or incorporating, but it needs a lot of help today.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good plans out there that people don't even know about. What you were just saying is a great plan, and hopefully that will happen in the next few years. Well, I think we're pretty close. If people have other points, I think the one thing I think I would take away from this is that PCDC John Chin is very thoughtful, has been doing this work in the trenches for many years, and it's not, decisions aren't made in a vacuum, and decisions aren't made quickly, because for very large projects that take years and years, including the arena, it's not something you can make it. Some people can't make a decision overnight. Some people already have, but I think John is saying, we need to gather more information on that project and work on other projects moving forward. Is that what you would would you say that's your sentiment in general?
Yeah, yeah, that's our sentiment. Neighborhood planning takes a long time, and we have to do fact finding, and we're going to do some impact studies on the arena. Yeah.
And don't forget, Chinese New Year's on Sunday. So this is a very good, auspicious time for all of us. Even if you don't really celebrate it, go down to Chinatown and check it out and spend some money there too. Any last thoughts, questions before we end? Oh, Paul.
Yeah, I just want to, compliment John here, because so much of this media has been reported as an us against them, and I don't mean to minimize the tensions with the Sixers, but John's pointing to the opportunities that exist with Vine Street. The opportunities, if you think about the police administration building, the African American Museum, that's an entire city block from Arch to Race, 7th to 8th. Possibilities to narrow Race Street as we redesign Vine Street. So I think there's a really positive side of what can happen to really expand the territory of Chinatown, the connectivity, and somehow or other, if that weaves together with whatever the resolution is on the arena, those things should be thought about as a whole. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to rethink a whole new quadrant of the city, add housing for Chinatown, and yet meet other needs is how I look at this. But not to say that's an easy path, and there's also points of conflict. But thanks, John, for at least pointing to the positive opportunities too.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Paul. Appreciate that.
Yeah, Paul is also another big picture person that, and that's what we really, in my opinion, need in a lot of this conversation. Not like the micro, how's it going to affect one little piece. It's really the larger planning of a community that PCDC, the Center City District have been working on for many years. So it's a continuum, not a single dot, I think. Any other last thoughts? We are like almost on time. Amazing.
Great. Thanks, Andy. Thank you, everybody, for inviting me.
Great job. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and look for our next session and go to the website. You can find the old ones, and this is recorded and this will be out there within a month. Thank you.